cut my ship into pieces. Now it is very short. Hello everybody and welcome. It's a new year and there have been new developments for Kitten Space Agency, one of the games I've been following closely for the past year and more. And some of the new developments that we're going to talk about in this video are quite exciting, so make sure you stay tuned until the end. If you don't know yet, Kitten Space Agency, or also abbreviated KSA, is the unofficial spiritual successor to Kerbal Space Program, basically the space game simulation legend that invented this entire genre of games. And if you want to stay in the loop about KSA's development or space games in general, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Today we're going to look at the 5 things that are now in the most recent build of KSA. And yes, of course, this also runs on Linux, as I pointed out in my last video. And these 5 things, in my opinion at least, make KSA move more towards being not just a spiritual successor to KSP, but maybe actually starting to clone it. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. And the first one is starting locations. In Kerbal Space Program, you of course start from the Kerbal Space Center. So far in Kitten Space Agency, you started right off the bat in orbit around the Earth. That has changed with the recent update. Now, immediately on the Start Splash screen, you can select where you want your rocket to be on start. Of course, there's still the orbit around Earth as one of the options, but there are also classic launch sites, like for instance Launch Complex 39A in Cape Canaveral or the Vandenberg site. And there are historic space sites, space exploration sites like the Apollo 11 landing site or the Pioneer landing site, or a couple of others like the Venera probe sites listed here. And when you click Start KSA, you will show up there and you can enjoy the scenery. For instance, here LC-39A is underwater, which is kind of realistic since it's a Floridian swampland that had to be developed to actually make the launch pad. So yeah, not really a minus point for the developers, to be honest. Or you can launch from the Venera landing site, the Venera program of course being the Soviet Venus landers that had to endure a lot of harsh conditions on Venus, and barely none of them really survived longer than 1.5 or 2 hours. If you're interested, I made a video about that program a long time ago as part of my Soviet space history series. I'll link that video up top and in the description. But launching from Venus in this vehicle looks quite exciting. I mean, look at those cloud formations, which are, I think, sulfuric acid or something like that in reality, so maybe not so comfortable to fly through them. As I said, there's also Mars and other options to choose from, so hey, go grab the game, it's free, so find out yourself. And even if it's free, maybe you can support the developers by leaving a financial contribution there. So, while I was launching my vehicle, you might have noticed something else here, and this is the second item I want to talk about. Part highlighting. Yes, if you are a KSP veteran, you will recognize this behavior. Hover your mouse above the vessel, and depending on which part you hover the mouse over, it is going to be highlighted. Unlike KSP, at least at the moment, you cannot turn this off while in flight. But you can change the color here in the menu. You'd have to open up the settings menu and then go to the interface tab, and then you can pick whatever color you desire. For instance, the bright green from KSP, or just a more decent, more subdued white. If we're being honest, this is just a helpful information for you to select the right part you want to point at, because now you can use right-click menus. Yes, this is the third item we want to talk about here, and right-click menus or part action menus or part configuration menus or whatever you want to call them are a staple of KSP gameplay. If there's something you can tweak about a part or change about it or do anything with it, it is going to be in a right-click menu, at least in Kerbal Space Program. You can, for instance, aim the camera onto it, or you can, if it's a decoupler, you can decouple something. We'll talk about that later. Or you can close the fuel tank, or you can change how the fuel is going to flow through the vehicle, etc. So a lot of options are opening up when you have such a part menu. But at the moment, since it is very early days for Kitten Space Agency, that part menu is still empty except for one thing, and that is decoupling. But as I said, if you remember how KSP works, we can be sure that there are going to be a lot more options to follow into this. And yes, I said decoupling, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about decoupling. You can now turn your single vessel into multiple smaller ones. Right-click on a part and you can separate it and its children from the rest of your spacecraft. And no, I'm not going to repeat that song attempt from the intro. Unless you guys want a full version of it, let me know in the comments either way. Shut up or turn it up. Once you decouple your capsule from the rest of the vessel, there's nothing you can really do because there's no RCS present on the capsule. On your starting vessel, the rocket, only the tank part has RCS modules on it, so that's the only thing you can actually control once you decouple everything. And I'm not 100% sure, but it appears that only the parts attached to the current route get the decouple option and not the route itself, which of course makes sense. And of course, once you separate the route from the rest of the vehicle, another part of the rest of the vehicle becomes the new route of that vehicle. So we get more things to do in the game, but let's think about why we need decoupling. The developers say it is an important part for the next milestone, and I quote, "This functionality gives us a pretty big step forward in gameplay complexity for vehicles and parts and is a key part of the current milestone, which is fast approaching completion." Now please imagine this in an Australian accent, which I'm not going to try to attempt, since it was written by JPL Repo and he is, I think, from Melbourne? Personally, I have an idea what that milestone could be, but I'm not going to tell you now, because maybe you'll come to the same conclusion after we talk about the next item. Resource flow. Well, this is also something the team has started to work on. But we only have very sparse information on that. Basically, we have one sentence in the post on the KSA website, and we have a couple of graphs that show how which part consumes resources from where. It may not look like much, but this is very important to calculate where propellant is drained from, so mass and delta V change correctly for your vessel. When you burn propellant, or when you fire your RCS thrusters, which also burn propellant. And if you think back to Kerbal Space Program and the editor, you will also notice that there is a resource flow diagram there as well, where you can see which part drains fuel from where, so you can make sure that your staging works correctly. Maybe you've already guessed where I'm heading to now with my train of thought. If we put all of this together, I think we're going to see something resembling staging to enter the game at not so far into the future. Because now we have decoupling, we have the team working on the resource flow stuff, we have the right-click menu. So maybe it's staging, at least I believe it could be staging, that is going to happen in the not too distant future as the next milestone or one of the next milestones. But I don't have any confirmation of that from the developers, so your guess is as good as mine. So hey, let me know in the comments what you think about that. Personally, I really believe we do need to have staging if we want to have a more realistic rocket than one overpowered spaceship with 1,000,000 kilometers per second of delta V. So we're going to need multiple stages. If you don't know yet, staging in rocketry is important to get more efficiency out of your huge hulking behemoth of a metal tube with propellant inside of it. It's all based on the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation. You can look that up, I'm not going to explain that now, but basically it dictates that if you really want to get to space, you should probably use a multi-stage rocket and not just one single stage. And yes, all of you SSTO fans out there are going to cry out in pain and anguish now. Are you an SSTO guy? Let me know in the comments. Me personally, if you have watched this channel for a while, you will know that I'm more the multi-stage approach person. Now, a couple more thoughts before we end this video. As I said in the beginning, all of this is starting to turn Kitten Space Agency more into Kerbal's space program. So the question is, what is going to be the own identity of KSA going forward? I mean, it can't be just that instead of Kerbals they're using kittens, right? So there has to be something coming down the line. And if we think about the single part menus versus the other approach that Kerbal Space Program 2 tried with one big part manager window, it appears that the KSA developers decided to go for the older system. Judging from a lot of comments of you guys back when KSP2 was released, I don't think anyone is going to be mad about that. But all of this, as I said, is still very early days. We're not yet into a real alpha situation, we're still in the pre-alpha phase, and while the game is public and you can get it for free, as I said before, or you can contribute to the development to keep the developers financially afloat, which would be commendable, everything you see and experience within KSA is all a work in progress and could change with the next update. But be that as it may, I think we have some exciting developments and I like it. And if you like what I do on this channel, maybe go over on Patreon and look at the tiers that we have available over there. For instance, you can watch all of my videos ad-free without those pesky YouTube ad breaks. And if you choose one of the higher tiers, your name will show up here, together with all of these wonderful people. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. I really, really appreciate it. Me personally, I appreciate all the hard work that the developers have put into the game so far and continue to put into it. And finally, we get a bit more to do. For instance, rendezvous and try to hit another vessel with the decoupled parts. Yes, I know what I'll do this weekend. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel for more and follow me on my social thingies. The links are in the description. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.